when you start your own business nowadays, you have to understand that people buy from people and that
Mm,
people love to buy, people buy stories, and in order to buy from you, they have to be two things have to be true. They have to know you and they have to trust you. So, in order to make that a reality, that people know you and trust you, the best way to really do that is that you start by building a super strong personal brand and a very compelling signature story, because this is something that sets you apart from like the thousands of other people out there doing the exact same thing that you probably try to do.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours? Just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we are always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Katja Pischel, and that's as close as I'm going to get to pronouncing it right. And Katja started her journey. Grew up and lived in southern Germany. Went to school at the University of Munich. Joined a startup company after graduation in the tech industry, and worked for a few other tech startups before going off to work at Microsoft Germany. Husband got a severe illness, so decided to go into a startup direction eventually after finishing up a couple of roles at Microsoft. And then after deciding to leave, started her business about around 2018, focusing on building brands and marketing them. And then also was navigating health issues and had to reduce work hours a bit, and wrote a book and kept herself busy. So with that much as introduction, welcome on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Devin. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely excited to have you on. So I just gave kind of a quick run through to a much longer journey. So why don't we rewind and unpack a little bit and tell us a little bit about how your journey got started living in South Germany and going off to the University of Munich.
Sure. Um, I actually grew up in a town like an hour away from Munich, but after graduating from high school, I moved to Munich, so the big city, and went to university there and studied political science because I really wanted to understand how the world operates on a global scale, how things are, interconnected and interdependent. And well, little did I know back then how that would prepare me for an exciting, diverse, and fulfilling over 20-year career as a female leader in the technology industry, where I honestly, personally exceeded even my wildest expectations. Um,
Now, so and to dive into that, so you went off to University of Munich, got the degree. Now, as you're coming out, I think if I remember right, we kind of started after graduation. You went to work for a startup in the tech industry. Is that kind of where the everything began after earning the degree?
that is very true. I started working for that startup actually already during my time at university. Um, and that really has been like my first major work experience.
Hmm.
Um, and starting to work in an environment where there were no hierarchies, there was no structure, but a very high degree of self-responsibility and really like entrepreneurial spirit. And I mean, later on, that company actually was sold for over 1 billion to SAP. Unfortunately, that was only 15 years after I had left, but that would have been something.
Now
Yeah.
you did that for a number of period of time. Now, if I remember right, kind of as you went down that path, you ended up, switching or going between a few different startups before going to Microsoft Germany. But maybe kind of walk us through kind of what were the various startups you work with, and kind of what was how what was that part of your journey like?
After that first startup, it was back in the late 1990s. So really, I was part of that very first internet hype, so to speak. And after I left there, I went to another startup who was it was a small, fast-growing company, but eventually there was a merger and acquisition phase, and I was a young woman, really curious and eager to learn. And I wanted, after like two smaller companies, I wanted to work for like a real company, still in tech. And this is how I started my career, actually, in marketing, and also my leadership career. Um, and then I think that must have been like the first like 5, 6 years of my career, 7 years.
Hmm.
Um, and then Microsoft called, which was amazing because I would have never imagined that a company like Microsoft would be interested in somebody with my resume. Back then, I didn't know anything about hiring for diversity and potential. Now, obviously, I know all about this. But it has been amazing because, for somebody who's super curious, learns a very fast learner, uh, I think that environment has been just perfect because I could switch jobs, like every 2 years, learn new things, grow into a recognized leader, had very different roles around marketing communications, was leading teams, eventually became part of the leadership team of Microsoft Germany. And now, after learning at university how the world operates on a global scale, I learned how like a massive corporation operated. So that has been
Now,
quite
one question,
something.
because it kind of feels like it'd be a little bit of shifting gears, right? Being in the startup world, you usually have smaller teams or a more limited
Mhm.
budget. You don't have as broad of resources. And so oftentimes now, as you make that kind of that switch, so to speak, to going working with Microsoft, which is certainly not by any means a small company, kind of what was that, or was there any differences in kind of, or how did you make that shift or that transition and mindset or go to working for a large business after going and working at the smaller startups?
The interesting thing, and I didn't expect that, but actually Microsoft back then was very, like, from a mindset and culture perspective, was still very entrepreneurial. And the skills that had helped me to be successful in the startup world, can-do attitude, higher self-responsibility, curiosity, fast learner, and action taker were actually the exact same things that made me successful at Microsoft. Um, and probably there was also, there was a bit of luck involved, like always in life. It takes luck to be at the exact right time in the exact same right place. But yeah, I mean, I remember and it's something that you do as an entrepreneur every day, right? But I created actually two of my roles out of nothing. They weren't there. I just saw like a need in the market. I made a business case, and then yeah, there was the headcount.
So now, no, that makes sense. Sounds like it was a good opportunity, kind of while it was, a larger corporation, having that kind of entrepreneurial mindset or, that,
Mhm.
culture certainly matched up with you or doing well. So now you were at Microsoft. How long were you there for?
11 years.
So there for 11 years, good iteration. Sounds like you had got some great inspiration and as well as had a good opportunity to fill different roles. Now, at some point, are kind of shifted gears more back to the startup world, or kind of going back down that path. So maybe you kind of walk us through what led you to that.
Yeah, when I was just telling my story, one could maybe think this sounds like a pretty straight line, and I I have to tell you, not at all. And like a first turning point actually was in the fall of 2013, when I literally within 2 weeks turned from an energetic, healthy, athletic woman into somebody who couldn't climb 4 steps in the cinema without being out of breath. Um,
Mm.
and in the beginning, this just made me feel confused because I had no idea what was going on. And I started losing weight up to a point where it felt like my body was eating itself from the inside out. And this really scared the hell out of me. And it came to a point where at night I couldn't sleep anymore because my heart was beating like a drum. And back then I was in pure panic. And then finally in it was February of 2014. It was 4 weeks before I was supposed to go on a sabbatical to Nepal and India. I was finally diagnosed with a severe thyroid disease and an increased risk of cancer. And my doctor wanted me to cancel my trip. She wanted me to get surgery right away. So there I was sitting in her practice and listening, to this diagnosis. And then, like, probably the first time in my life, my intuition entered the scene in a very dramatic way, because literally everything inside of my body screamed, no, no, I'm not getting the surgery. This is wrong. I'm gonna go to Nepal and I'm gonna make a deal with myself. I'll take the time to find out what lesson am I here, what I'm supposed to learn out of this. Um, so this is what I did. I went to Nepal, and like a few weeks later, I was sitting at a beautiful mountain lake overseeing the Himalayan Annapurna mountain range, and I remember like very consciously taking two decisions. And number one, life is short and I have no more time to waste. And number two, I will not make any more bad compromises in my life regarding my career, and only do what like truly inspires me. And that's, that led me to taking really a lot of time and diving very deep into some very, yeah, substantial questions. Who am I? What do I stand for? What is it really that I want to do with my career and life? And looking back, that was like the very first step into starting my own business, even though it took a while until I made the leap.
So now, so that led, so kind of taking that step back, taking a look at things, doing that kind of assessment and analysis. Kind of what business did that lead you to, or kind of, or what, where did you decide to, even if it took a period of time, what direction were you going to head?
Yeah, and it's also so funny because you understand how things fall in place only like afterwards with looking back. So 1 year later, like basically everything had changed. That experience in Nepal made me very consciously choose my last two roles at Microsoft, and I chose them already with I didn't know what I was going to do with my business yet, but I know that was going to happen, in the next few years. So I very consciously chose two jobs. I got a coaching certificate. I founded a non-for-profit organization that I ran for 10 years. And funny enough, and that's like the biggest learning from this sabbatical, basically two learnings. One is sometimes you have to slow down to speed things up. And the
Hmm.
second was I never needed any surgery. So my intuition has been spot on. Like a few months later, everything was fine. It took another crisis actually in 2016 when, and you mentioned it in the beginning, my husband got severely ill, which meant I actually had to step down from my leadership role, like a role in the leadership team of Microsoft Germany, reduced my working hours to a 4-day work week. Um, but that also gave me the time to prepare my business, because like I realized after 1 year into his illness, I realized this is not going to end anytime soon. And I again had a very, clear moment. You can have like an illness or disease dictate your whole life, or you don't. And
Mm,
I just chose the second option. And in 2018, in the beginning of 2018, I decided, okay, by the end of the year, I'm out. I'm going to start my own business. And then it was obviously meant to be because like 4 weeks before I was going to hand in my notice, um, my job was cut and the company offered me a severance package. And I was like, yay, it felt like winning the lottery.
mm.
Yeah.
So, you got which, fortuitously, there's a lot of times your position gets cut and you're no longer employed. You typically don't look at that as a good opportunity, or at least not something that you would strive towards or want. And in this case, it sounds like it was a great opportunity, in the sense that kind of give you a bit of a runway and an opportunity to kind of go down that path of doing your own business. And so, kind of as you went down that route and started down doing that, kind of walk us through, how did you get the business up and going? Was it a smooth process? Was it, success from the start? Was it ups and downs? Kind of walk us through kind of that early on as you got the business going after or having that leave or having that runway, kind of how it went for you.
You know, it's so funny because people and everybody tells you, you know, how hard it is to start your business and how long it takes to set things up. And this might be true for some people. It hasn't been true for myself because I uh, I already knew I wanted to work with leaders, female leaders in the tech industry. I had developed, while I was still employed, I had developed a program, my signature program for helping them to develop their personal brand and become, you know, visible and ultimately getting more of what they want and deserve. And like my first year was tremendously successful. Um, and you know, and I think like that startup mentality that I had built so early, or that startup muscle that I had built so early in my career really helped me because you know, I just went out there and tried things, you know, and this is what you have to do because in the beginning you don't know what works. So you have to try different things. You don't have, I mean, you still are afraid of rejection, but you still go, right? And I was able, like within a like within a few months, I scaled my one-on-one coaching program into group programs. I offered them to tech companies. I also offered them to consumers. So I had built various revenue streams within a year, and I think it was early in year two, I had already trained another coach with my personal branding method. So she, you know, would go and train other people with my method.
Now, so you start training people that method. Sounds like you got some good traction as you're going through that. Now you get going to, or sometimes you kind of get that initial excitement of getting a business going, getting some initial customers or clients and getting some of that traction. And then now
Mhm.
you have to transition into building a more, sustainable or long-lasting business and continuing to develop, additional clientele as well as kind of the direction and honing it in. So maybe catch us up from that beginning, kind of walk us through to where it's at today.
Yeah, you know, the thing is, well, that was back in 2019, 2020. And then something happened that I hadn't expected, but honestly the year-long illness of my husband also, and like the stress that was related with that took its toll also on myself. So 21, 22, I had, you know, I started to have some health issues. Was super optimistic for 2023, but then yeah, I mean life life happened again. And even though that year was supposed to be to bring like major growth to the company, it turned out life had different plans, because in September, a what was supposed to be a regular checkup at my eye doctor turned into a nightmare. And I have to say, I was already born with a severe visual impairment, and I got artificial lenses implanted in 2010. And on that day, out of the blue, the doctor told me, you know what, we have to take out your lenses. There's severe damage to your eyesight already. And, you will need corneal transplantation. And I was like, what? What? Out of the blue? And it's so interesting because, again, my intuition, there were like two thoughts almost simultaneously. And the first one was, oh shit, this is going to have a massive impact on my life and business. And the second one was, I have to write a book about this. And the title starts with, and then life happened. And I was sitting there, almost laughing at the irony of the situation. And I said to myself, universe, did you just hear what message I got? If you want me to write a book, I don't have any time for extra projects. I had to prepare for various surgeries. So if you want me to write a book, I need like clear instruction how this is going to work. And um, I let my intuition guide me through the process, and it told me, while I was navigating surgeries, while I was keeping my business alive, it told me that book needed to be written in English. It told me that this is not only about my own story, but also about the story of 6 other female entrepreneurs. Eventually, their names came to me because they've all been in my network already, and I started the writing process in 24 in July, um, finished it in November, and since the beginning of February in 25, the book is available worldwide. So, and now this, brings a totally different dynamic to also to my business.
Hmm. Well, no, it sounds like, that the book was a good path to, probably one is to give you something else to focus on as you're dealing with the health issues, as well as an opportunity to kind of express your thoughts and also provide or insight for others that may be going through similar situations. And then to kind of continued on to maybe expand a little bit on the business journey as far as additional avenues to pursue. So it sounds like it was definitely a great option. So, well, now as we've kind of reached that present day of the journey, and even kind of where things are at as of today, great time to transition to the two questions I always like to ask at the end of each
Mhm.
episode. So we're going to jump to those now. So the first question I'd like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What'd you learn from it?
The worst business decision was that, let's say, 2 years into my business, COVID hit, and I thought, it'd be a great idea to start a second company with a friend of mine, because I saw that massive opportunity that came with so much more people working from home than ever before, and how that impacted the way people were leading teams. Um, but and that worked out okay-ish, but there was one like massive problem. I totally underestimated how much energy it would take away from my core business. I had just gotten to a point where things are really, taking off. Um, but I still, I just did it. And today I see founders do that all the time. Like the mistake I made, I see them make all the time. They try out many things. They come to a point where they have product market fit, where they understand how things really work. And then they say, great, let's do something else. It doesn't necessarily mean they start a new business, but they try, they might try a new marketing strategy or something instead of doubling down of what is working already. Um, so what I really learned from this is that and I'm just a very curious person, and I'm excited by so many different things. And I just learned, and that's the lesson, that my business isn't there, to fulfill my need for variety. That's just not its purpose.
No, and I think that that I can see both sides, and you getting going as a business. Sometimes you don't know what is going to be the best option or provide the
True.
most traction or feedback, and so you try a number of different things, and sometimes those are become almost passion projects or something that really isn't overall helpful to the business, and yet you'd want to try it out, or it becomes of interest, or you go down that path, and so that's certainly kind of an easy area to make a mistake, but also a great one to learn from.
Hmm.
Second question now that I like to ask is, so now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one rule of thumb you'd recommend?
I think the market, at least in Germany and Europe, for starting your business has changed pretty significantly. With COVID, you saw so many people leaving the workplace and doing their own things, and especially like the industry that I work with, which is coaches and consultants now that I help starting their business. Um, I
Oh, looks like we might have lost your audio there, or for just a second. Sorry, say that last part one more time.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So what I
Oh,
said is
still
the
lost your
market.
audio.
Hold on. Can you still hear me?
Oh, there you go. There we're back. Sorry about that for the audience. Sounds like looks like we might have or we had just a short technical glitch. So apologize, at least on my end. Maybe the audience could hear it, but cut out there for just a second. So maybe just kind of pick that back up and say a little bit, kind of repeat just for the audience one more time that kind of one rule of thumb that you would recommend.
Yeah. When you start your own business nowadays, you have to understand that people buy from people and that
Hmm.
people love to buy, people buy stories, and in order to buy from you, they have to be two things have to be true. They have to know you and they have to trust you. So, in order to make that a reality, that people know you and trust you, the best way to really do that is that you start by building a super strong personal brand and a very compelling signature story, because this is something that sets you apart from like the thousands of other people out there doing the exact same thing that you probably try to do.
Yeah, no, I think that that one always becomes more and more of a focus. I think as people or we have live in a social media online world, it continues to shrink, more interconnected. Also, a lot of noise and kind of a lot of competing interests. Having that ability to have a brand that people can identify with, resonate with, and otherwise have that more of a personal connection definitely can be impactful and be beneficial and be worthwhile to the business. So, yeah, so I think that that is definitely a great rule of thumb and takeaway. Well, now as we do wrap up, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Well, the best way really is to find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, this is um, where I'm at all the time.
Awesome. Well, that's certainly where I'm at as well. So I encourage people to reach out, make a new connection, support a great business. If nothing else, make a new best friend. So with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you other listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. Just go to inventiveunicorn.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners. Make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And along that note, if you ever along your journey need help with patents or trademarks or anything else with your startup, your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again for coming on the podcast and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you for having me.